I'm Jim Shaw from the Colonial Times and LexMedia. I'm here today. It is Monday, April 27th, and I'm here with our Lexington town manager, Jim Malloy. Jim, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And as I mentioned before we started, I noticed that the COVID beard is coming in quite well. It actually looks pretty good on you, so I might recommend keeping it after things begin to slow down. So let's start today with our COVID number in Lexington, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in the community.
Yeah, so today our number is 246 people who are currently positive. While it has been increasing steadily, the good thing is it only went up by one person in the last day. So.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing. And how does that measure, I mean, against other communities? Pretty average, or maybe a touch above average, or?
It's maybe a little bit above average.
Okay.
On the state website now, the COVID-19 website, there's actually a dashboard that compares the total number in each community.
Okay.
Also then has the number per 100,000 population, so that you can actually do a real apples to apples comparison about where we're at. So I'd say we're in the middle.
Yeah, sure. In Massachusetts, for whatever reason, has become number 3 in the country. For a small state, I know that's quite concerning, which kind of leads us to the topic of making sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And, I'm out and about because of what I do here in the Colonial Times. I travel just about every day to my office, and I live in Lexington. So I don't make a lot of stops in between, but I do see who's out there, and I do notice that people are still, for the most part, not lots of people, but a good number of people are still out there in numbers greater than 2 or 3. Many not wearing masks and doing the things that we really need to be doing. I know the town has really gone out of its way to try to encourage people to slow down certain activities like playing on the fields and all of that. But I mean, we shouldn't have to keep asking people to do the smart thing here. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We continue to encourage people to not gather in groups and not play any kind of group sports. We have received a number of complaints, not just people playing group sports, that people are out walking their dogs on trails and have their dogs off leash, and that unnecessarily ends up if their dog goes up to another person, and then the dog owner has to go over and grab their dog. It brings them in close proximity. And a lot of the complaints we're getting is that a lot of those people are not wearing face masks. And so after reviewing this and looking at what other communities are doing, a lot of other communities are beginning to require face masks be worn by all employees in essential businesses, and that anybody going into an essential business wears a face mask. And so I think the Board of Health will be discussing that further this week, and may be issuing a guideline or a regulation sometime later this week requiring that masks be worn in essential businesses.
Mm-hmm. It's really not a tough thing to do. I actually have a couple that I keep in my car. I don't receive anybody here at my office during this period. I'm alone here at my office, but I keep one here just in case. I noticed even coming here today that even the postal workers who were in trucks are wearing them. So everyone's getting on board with this, and it's time for everybody in Lexington to do it voluntarily. If we don't do it voluntarily, then we'll surely do it under a mandatory order. I know that the city of Somerville is going to a mandatory order as of Wednesday, and so are other communities. And by the way, you make a very good point about the leash. I know that we have a leash law that also allows for people to, I think, what do they call it, on command or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we need to forego that and stick hard to a leash if you're going to go out. And it doesn't necessarily take 7 people to walk a dog too. I notice a lot of folks going out in big groups with the dog, which is nice. But we just need to continue to be smart about this. As you say, our number grew only by 1. And hopefully the trend will catch up with the normal trend, which is to flatten it out a little bit very soon. And then, soon enough, people will be able to sort of go back to doing these things. But right now, we really have to stick to the program. Testing is a big part of that. And I understand that, I know that up until recently, there's been a testing program that Lexington people could take advantage of in Waltham. But I understand that there is a drive-through testing facility that's going to open in Lexington, at least on a particular day.
Yes. So the Department of Public Health has been coordinating with the police and fire departments and a company called Physicians One. And Physician One runs a urgent care clinic in Waltham, and they'll be hosting a drive-through COVID-19 testing site at the Lexington Elks Lodge on Waltham Street on May 1st. The test on May 1st, what need to do is complete a pre-screen evaluation in advance with the Physician One urgent care provider. They can do that doing a telehealth visit, so they can do it online. And then they'll be given a time on May 1st to show up, and then they just need to show that time when they get there.
I was going to say, do you know how to contact Physicians One, or is there
there will be a release going out today that has the contact information that our public information officer is putting out. But I would imagine that if you just to Google Physician One Waltham, you would come up with both the site and a phone number. And
that'll obviously be put up on the town website as well, right?
That's correct. And I believe we may even do a code red on it.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's see. Beyond drive-through testing, sort of shifting our gears a little bit here. We have I know on Friday that you had issued a memo on some of the fiscal implications of COVID. So I know you're sort of digging down a little deeper on it now with some of the senior staff. What is it that you have there that you'd like to share with folks?
Yeah. So as most people can guess, a lot of communities have begun talking about what the fiscal implication is going to be of having all the businesses closed, because it does have an impact on the town's resources. And so we've gone through an exercise looking at our local receipts as well as state aid. And we're probably being a little conservative right now, just because it's really early. So one of the things we're doing is we're moving forward with our fiscal year 21 budget previously been approved. And the reason why we're doing that is that we don't have the information that we need to make a solid recommendation. So what we're doing is we're going to go forward with our fiscal year 21 budget, hold back on spending as much as possible, and provide an update on a monthly basis to the select board, the Appropriations Committee, the Capital Expenditures Committee, the school superintendent, and the school committee. And then we'll do it more often as necessary if Congress takes some sort of action that might have a positive or negative impact on us, or if the state legislature does. But right now, we're looking at a shortfall in fiscal year 21 of about $6.3 million in the general fund, and then maybe another $1 million or $2 million in the enterprise funds that we operate. Because as you can imagine, all of our recreation programs have been closed down. Our golf course has been, but we still have a lot of contractual obligations on those operations. So one of the actions that we've already taken is typically every year we transfer money into the Capital Stabilization Fund and into the other post-employment benefits fund. And we've opted not to do that this year. And so what we've done is it has freed up about $3 million, just under $3 million in available resources. So that allows us to address a big chunk, half of that $6.2 million shortfall that we see next year. And so we will continue to monitor the situation.
When you talk about being able to recover like $3 million from some of the other programs that you would not fund, and that's kind of like the town has an obligation to fund pensions and all of that stuff.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's where some of the money's coming from.
Not from the pension, but from the other post-employment benefits, which is for retiree health insurance.
I see.
We have a obligation that we know what it is, and
Yeah.
Lexington is actually doing a really good job on having a consistent funding for that. But
Right.
in the areas that we are not actually required to fund, if we don't fund it, it can affect our
Bond rating, exactly. And that's the point I wanted to make for folks to understand, that it's not necessarily money that's just laying around that's not being used, because eventually you have to fund that. It's like eventually fully funding the pension liability fund.
Yep.
All of this has to be done eventually, and if it doesn't, and likewise the rainy day fund. I mean, one of the reasons we have such good bond ratings in in the eyes of the lenders is because that we have accrued a considerable amount of money in our rainy day fund. Yeah. And I imagine, will you be looking to that a little bit as well, or are you trying to stay away from that for the time being?
We're going to try to stay away from it as much as possible. I think if we can continue to provide services without utilizing any of those funds, what we may look at first is, we'll try to figure out what the total amount we need to make up, and then we'll have ongoing discussions with the school department about what they're able to do, the town is able to do on our side. We may postpone some program improvements that we were looking at this year, and we may postpone some capital that we were looking at this year, and then that would free up some additional funds, make up the budget. And I think all of our staff fully understands that that's a potential this fiscal year, just given the whole situation.
Right. In municipalities, towns, cities, state governments, are they looking for funding in the next round of what might happen in Washington? Is there a possibility for that?
We are. There's one of the things that is included in the current CARES Act is there's there's funding for local governments. Massachusetts is slated to get $2.3 billion. A lot of that will go to the city of Boston right off the top. This will be distributed to other cities and towns, but the problem with it is that it is based on spending more money than what you had budgeted.
Right.
And it doesn't account for revenue loss. And so there's a big lobbying effort in Washington, D.C. right now by the big 7 governmental associations. That's the Governors Association, National League of Cities, International City Managers, Association of Counties, the legislatures, all of these large organizations that are national associations that deal with state and local government are all lobbying pretty hard to have this aid package actually focus on revenue loss as much as expenditure overages. And
you're part of that, aren't you? You're president of one of those large organizations.
I'm the president-elect of the International City Managers Association. So it's one of the things that was the very first item as a priority in a letter that the executive director sent to the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House this last week.
Okay. Well, thank you for your work on that. Among other things that you're juggling.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, we're sort of heading in the right direction, and eventually it's all going to end up at town meeting. So, for the most part, at least to manage what we have now, and how we sort of go through here on a local level, what are the plans right now? I know that there's been a postponement and sort of ongoing discussions for plans for town meeting. What is that? What's happening there?
So right now, excuse me, town meeting is postponed until May 13th, but we've been holding meetings on a fairly regular basis to put together a remote town meeting. And it will probably be more likely to be around June 1st because we want to do some work on surveying town meeting members to identify who may have some technology needs to make sure that everybody has equal access to the technology that's needed. The software, there's a group that's been working on this closely, and the software that they have honed in on is the same software that is used right now for electronic. So hopefully that will allow a lot of town meeting members who are already comfortable and knowledgeable about how that works, or to make it a little bit less of a training need, that they will already have an understanding on how that'll work. And maybe it'll just be more how they do some of the more typical town meeting activities online. Zoom is what we'll be doing to this. And so we're looking around June 1st. We should be moving forward on a number of different things over the next week. Representative Socolo has introduced legislation that would make remote town meetings legal during this state of emergency. And just in case that doesn't pass in time, the Board of Selectmen this evening will be considering opening and closing a special town meeting warrant, which will have one article on it that would request a home rule petition for special legislation that would validate any votes taken at a remote town meeting for the town of Lexington. The town of Brookline is doing the same exact thing. They're following the legislation. In fact, the legislation was introduced by Michelle Socolo and by the state rep from Brookline. But also going forward with the special town meeting route as well, just so the legislation doesn't pass.
Sure. And as usual, and I don't mean to be touting Lexington, but, you know, I'd like to think that, as usual, we're kind of leading the way here, because there are 35 other towns, roughly, approximately, that are dealing with representative town meeting and the issues that are sort of holding us back from actually holding a traditional town meeting. So you know, given the fact that Representative Socolo was out front, it's just another, you know, it's sort of indicative of the planning and the discussions and the leadership that people in Lexington have been taking. So I'm hoping they'll be able to settle that soon. And I know that you're hamstrung with other issues. Like, you can only postpone town meeting for so long, and it can only be done by, that's why it's being done for May 13th, and then it'll be postponed again. Is that, because of the rules that govern town meetings. Yeah. So hopefully that'll all work itself out. But it also leads to another question. Sort of one issue sort of leads to the next, which is critical committees like the Appropriations Committee and others that need to meet and have discussions about expenditures prior to town meetings. So how are we doing with sort of planning for other essential boards and committees?
Yes, so there have been a number of boards and committees like the Appropriations Committee and Capital Expenditures Committee. And those boards and committees that sit as quasi-judicial bodies like the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Appeals, that have any Conservation Commission among some other ones, that have specific statutory deadlines that they have to meet, or things are constructively approved. So they've been meeting using a Zoom platform. But then we have a number of other committees that really would like to meet, because there are some issues that that's, for instance, the Recreation Committee. You know, they're highly dependent upon a lot of the programs that we provide through the Recreation Department, and yet they haven't really been meeting. And so this provides an opportunity. What we're doing is expanding the number of committees that can meet, so that, and starting this week, we did a training last week with all the board and committee chairs. Doug Lucente and I did it. Mm-hmm. They're fully prepared to go forward, and we've offered, one of us will sit in on their first meeting just to help them through if they really need it. And I think most people kind of get it. The good thing is that the Zoom platform it works well, and there aren't a ton of different settings that you have to do to make it work. And so it's pretty easy for people, once they've done it once, to get it right.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we'll be looking forward to that as well. Couple more quick issues, Jim, and then I'll let you get back to work. I know that May 4th was the date designated by the governor to reopen non-essential businesses. That was the date that, that they sort of speculated would be the target date that we could reopen. Things aren't moving as fast as everyone would like here in Massachusetts. And I know we want to be cautious and smart about the way we move forward. Are you hearing anything, or what are your, May 4th is really just essentially a week away or so. So it's coming up quickly. What's your take on that? Or what are you hearing on that?
So every week on Tuesday, I sit in on a Zoom meeting with the Lieutenant Governor and several state officials. All of the chief executive officers of all the cities and towns are invited to that. And this will be the last one before May 4th, because the following Tuesday is May 5th. And so it's anticipated right now, from what I'm hearing, that the governor will extend the state of emergency into Memorial Day, and that it's possible that there may be some additional businesses that are deemed essential. I'm not sure what they'll be, but that's what I'm hearing. I'll be sitting in on that tomorrow, and I'm sure that what has happened in the past is they've announced it to the municipal CEOs on Tuesday, and then they either make a statement later in the day on Tuesday or by noon on Wednesday. And
Right.
So I assume that everybody will get that information in the next 40 hours.
What time generally do they hold those meetings with you folks?
At 1 p.m.
Okay, so because I know I get emails from the governor's office every day, sort of announcing advisories as to what time they'll be, holding their press conferences.
Yeah.
So I imagine if the press conference comes after that 1 o'clock timeline, they'll probably, be announcing it publicly tomorrow. Yeah. If that is the case, it's hard to, we're sort of speculating at this point, but that's not the kind of thing I think that will, that will hold the day. I think that's the kind of news that'll move up quickly. So, but I appreciate you sharing that, and and people should understand it. I know it's hard for folks to hear that, especially if you're one of those affected businesses. And so many businesses in Lexington have worked so hard to sort of retool and reinvent themselves. It's hard to be able to hear that we may have to do this for a few more weeks. But I think, based on all indication, it's the smart thing to do. But, all we can do is encourage people in Lexington to do what they continue to do, which is find ways to support Lexington businesses. I see it happening all the time. There's been a great amount of generosity in this community. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best, and we'll see what the governor has to say tomorrow. That's essentially all we can do at this point. And then finally, I just thought it might be worthwhile to remind those small businesses that if they haven't yet applied for PPP loan, which is the personal paycheck program, they should do it. The second round of funding has come out, and like the first round of funding, it's going to go quickly. So I imagine you agree with me that if businesses are looking for that kind of relief, they shouldn't wait. They should do it now, not like if you haven't done it yet, get it done, the kind of thing.
Yeah, they absolutely should, because the money, like you just said, the money in the first round went very, very quickly. And I think it will this round too, because things, frankly, have gotten much better. It's historic numbers of people have filed for unemployment. And so there is a lot of economic issues out there that need to be addressed, and that this is one way that the federal government has made available, and it's something that could help a lot of smaller businesses. So it would encourage them. Yeah.
Now I'm not exactly sure which banks, because the PPP loans are being done through local banking institutions.
Yeah.
I know of 4 in Lexington that are doing them. I don't know if they're doing them for their own account holders, the customers, but Enterprise Bank is one of them, TD Bank, Eastern Bank, and as far as I know, Eagle Bank started. Now, I don't know about the others, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, but those are the ones that I have seen some sort of literature on. But if, I would always start with your own bank first. So pick up the phone, call your own bank or, bank and talk with them. And if not, maybe you can check in with one of the banks I mentioned. So,
yeah. And businesses could always contact our economic development office too to receive information on that.
That's right. And I understand we have a new economic development officer.
We do. She'll be starting in just a couple of weeks, which is interesting. We're starting to onboard employees virtually, which is a new challenge for us.
Yeah.
But Sandy Ayer is her name. She'll be starting shortly.
And she came from an organization that I think we work with pretty closely, if I remember correctly, one of the life sciences organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're really heading in the right direction. Jim, I want to thank you for taking time with me today. It went a little longer than I thought it would, but with a lot of good information. And I'll remind people that we're doing this every Monday with Jim Malloy, our town manager, and then we switched from every day to Mondays with Jim Malloy, and then Wednesdays and Fridays with a member of the Board of Selectmen. So look for us Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and we'll just keep you as informed as we can. So again, folks, thanks for tuning in, and Jim, thank you for being with us. And we look forward to a time when we can not have to do these updates anymore.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.